The First Amendment rights of the Ground Zero Mosque developers have been vigorously defended by everyone from fatwa-targeted author Salman Rushdie to President Obama himself. Let's take a look.
I believe that Muslims have the right to practice their religion as everyone else in this country. And that includes the right to build a place of worship in a community center on private property in Lower Manhattan in accordance with local laws and ordinances. This is America.
Indeed it is. All right, in September, Vincent Forras, a September 11th firefighter, first responder, filed suit against the developers of the Ground Zero Mosque, alleging that they are front persons controlled by interests tied to terrorism. And now Imam Faisal Rauf has countersued Forras and moved to dismiss the complaint. Lawfare, counter-lawfare are radical Islamists using the U.S. legal system to covertly advance their agenda. I'm Allen Barton. You're watching The Front Page. Joining me today in PJTV's Los Angeles studio is Larry Klayman, general counsel in the Forras lawsuit and founder of Freedom Watch, a conservative judicial rights activist group. Larry, pleasure to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Why don't you give us a little bit of sort of, with a 101 introductory on Vincent Forras, the case and its merits.
To get right to the point, this case has nothing to do with First Amendment rights. Our case is not premised on an attack on Islam. Our case is premised on a security threat to that neighborhood. We know that that neighborhood at Ground Zero, and the mosque is only about a block away, contrary to what this imam has told the rest of the world, that there have been attacks in that area since 9/11. There's been several. 2 attacks on the World Trade Center. There's the Times Square bomber, that's not far away. And even the president himself had suggested that he was going to move the Khalid Sheikh Mohammed trial from that same area, that's the federal center at Ground Zero, because of security risk. So what we're saying is a simple lawsuit. This is for nuisance, and it's for intentional infliction of emotional distress. The nuisance aspect is this is a risk to the neighborhood. It's going to increase the cost to the neighborhood and the taxpayers of New York, and therefore it should not be built there. So we're seeking to enjoin, that is, stop the construction of that mosque.
Well, a recent article in the American Spectator talked about this concept of Islamic lawfare, whereby they use the principles that have helped develop a free society to gain access, really, to the society, right, to then put forth principles that are not exactly that of an open society. So would you say that the lawsuit here is like using that tactic in reverse, and through the process of discovery, et cetera, forcing them to disclose information that they may not want to?
In effect. I mean, that is our purpose. We do believe, as we alleged in the complaint, you can find it at freedomwatchusa.org on the net. We've alleged that the imam, and there is evidence to suggest this, has donors that gave to the Holy Land Foundation in Dallas, which was convicted in a federal court there of being a terrorist front organization. We also know that the developers do have ties to unsavory people in the Middle East. And Imam himself on CNN, when he was interviewed by them about a month ago, threatened the United States. In effect, he said, if we don't build this mosque, there's going to be more terrorism in all likelihood in this area. So where's he coming from? And that's what we're going to be able to determine through discovery. I've done that, throughout my legal career with the Clintons and then with Bush and Cheney. We have an opportunity to get discovery, to find out where the money comes. Where the money comes will tell us what's at stake. And the imam wouldn't answer that question when he was asked by CNN, where's the money coming from? It looked like it was a cat swallowing a canary. It was just absurd.
And before we broaden this out, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you were saying today about what happened?
Well, what's remarkable, this is becoming a bad version of a radical Muslim theater of the absurd. We're not talking about Jean-Paul Sartre in France. We're talking about radical Muslims. The imam goes off, and this shows you his intentions. It shows you his bad faith. It shows you, in fact, the second part of our lawsuit, which is psychological terrorism, in effect, intentional infliction of emotional distress against the first responders and others in that area. He goes off and he hires, believe it or not, a Jewish lawyer. Now, I'm of Jewish origin myself. I'm a Jewish Christian. Mr. Forras is also Jewish. And this lawyer files an affidavit, it's called an affirmation, under oath, which was totally unnecessary, has nothing to do with the case, where he says he's Jewish and that Mr. Forras and I are acting like the Third Reich and that we're blind religious bigots. In effect, what the imam is doing, and he's using this Jewish lawyer who sold out, in my view, his own people by doing this, because that's not the tenet of Judaism, I know, being one, is that he's in effect issuing a fatwa to the rest of the world saying, Klayman and Forras hate Muslims, they're bigots. It's like telling them, go kill Larry Klayman and Vinnie Forras. I mean, it's unbelievable, and we'll be going into court and asking the judge to take action on that because it's unacceptable.
All right, through the magic of television here on the internet, let's broaden the discussion and bring in our other panelists. Terry Jones, Associate Editor for Investors Business Daily, Don Watkins, an analyst at the Ayn Rand Center for Individual Rights and columnist for Forbes.com. All right, gentlemen, in Canada there was this case where the author Mark Steyn was brought before the Complaints Commission there for his articles and his writings that they were, in effect, Islamophobic. Is this legitimate recourse for Western institutions, or do you think that this is really just a game? You know, do they believe in their cause when they do something like that, like taking Mark Steyn to court and saying, you know, this is a problem, or do you believe that it's purely cynical?
Well, the answer is twofold. And on the one hand, we've all been extremely sensitized by our institutions, education, the media, whatnot, to believe that we are somehow at fault for everything bad that happens in the world. So we therefore bend over backwards to accommodate whatever lawsuits, whatever complaints are made on behalf of the supposedly aggrieved. But the second part of this is that, yes, to an extraordinary degree, we have an open society and open access to our institutions from the outside, and they game the system. They know that this is a weak point for us and that they can tie us up with this, with a senseless argument over whether we should defend ourselves or not, or whether something that is plainly not in the interests of New York, having a mosque built directly near the Ground Zero site, whether that should be built or not. These things are not in our interest, but now we're debating it. And it's all under dispute.
Well, and Al-Qaeda, a manual obtained during a raid in Manchester, this is not new, this idea of using the legal system to kind of rig the entire procedure. Because the Guantanamo cases, they found that it told people who were going to be caught to make claims of torture quickly so that the media would get involved, and this whole this process. What do you think is the strategic advantage, Don, I'll go to you, of doing this kind of thing, of trying to go on the offensive with these wild claims? Is it just that it engenders this sort of liberal guilt deal where people go like, well, we can't fight the, you know, and it just stalls everything?
Well, it's an evil movement that takes advantage of bad laws that we have, and it takes advantage of the fact of what Terry alluded to, which is we have no moral spine. If during World War II you had dredged up examples of our soldiers being bad to Nazis, and there certainly were such examples, people would say, well, that's too darn bad. You guys shouldn't have started a war. A war has ugly aspects to it. We need to have the self-esteem to go and fight this enemy. And there's one other point I would bring up. They like to portray this as the bigotry against Islam. They call it Islamophobia. What they want to do is have us think of opposing people acting in the name of Islam as the equivalent of racism. But that is not true. Islam is an ideology in whatever form it takes. It's something a person chooses to embrace. It's ideas that people choose to hold. It's not the inconsequential color of a person's skin. And you have every right to discriminate against ideas that you regard as obscene and dangerous.
All right, Larry, I'll go back to you. In your lawsuit, I just want to quote one thing, because you alleged this about the groups behind the Ground Zero Mosque. Defendants Faisal and Cordoba House are the front persons and in charge of operations for interests tied to terrorism, which interests own, occupy, and or control in whole or in part the subject premises of the defendants. So are you able to discuss any ideas in terms of the evidence and what you want to present?
You know, and one of the things that we were just talking about is these countersuits and how they threaten people. This is their modus operandi. But when discovery starts, historically, particularly with the Council for American Islamic Relations, who has intervened in these kinds of cases before and may be behind the imam here, they fold. They go away because they don't want that discovery. And we are convinced that this imam, given what we know about some of the donors to his mosque and how they've given to terrorist organizations like the Holy Land Foundation, which was funneling money to Hezbollah and Hamas, that there are those links. And why did the imam refuse to answer the question of Soldat O'Brien on CNN when he was asked, where's the money coming from? He wouldn't say.
And when you say they fold, you say that he'll suddenly find a new location for
that countersuit against Vinny will go away, but frankly, I'm glad that they filed it because we're not giving up. We want
the countersuit will go away, or the actual mosque will go away, because at some point,
Well, that'll
wherever
probably-
they are, you can sort of say, like, you know what, I'm going to chase you for discovery on this. Or
That'll probably go away too. The lawsuit today keeps the Ground Zero Mosque away. Right.
Exactly. All right. Well, Larry Klayman, pleasure to have you. Thank you
The
so much
same.
for joining us today. That's Larry Klayman, founder of Freedom Watch and general counsel for Vincent Forras, the first responder who has filed suit for damages against Imam Rauf and the developers of the Ground Zero Mosque. Thanks also to our regular panelists, Don Watkins, an analyst at the Ayn Rand Center for Individual Rights, Terry Jones, associate editor for Investors Business Daily. Viewers, we want to hear from you. Are radical Islamists gaming the legal system? If so, how do we put a lid on those attempts to use our own courts against us? Can lawsuits like the one filed by Vincent Forras serve as an effective counterattack? We want to know. Click the comment button below. Tell us what you think. I'm Allen Barton. This is The Front Page.